Good afternoon everyone. It's Wednesday, I think it's the 1st of May today, and the sun is streaming through the trees here. It's absolutely beautiful. Now I put a video up a few days ago and it was called The Right Stuff, and I think I was out in the countryside and it was talking about writing, putting things down on paper. And one of the hobbies that a lot of people have mentioned in the comments is writing. They do a lot of writing, so I thought I'd like to just talk about that today a little bit and see if we can just encourage people to do a bit of writing. Now, I've always loved the English language. It's fabulous, it's round and it's difficult to learn apparently, but I've learned it from birth, so I'm one of the lucky ones. But it is fabulous, and I like to soak myself in it for years, just learning different words and how to use them. And I think it's a fabulous language. And I've always been one to write things down. I was never academically brilliant. I was like competent, but not brilliant. My father was a writer. He used to write history books to be used in schools about wars. He used to give talks on battles, Trafalgar in particular, and I followed his lead, and I used to give talks on the Zulu Wars, Isandlwana and Rorke's Drift to be specific. But I used to like writing, and then several years ago, my kids must have only been very, very young, so we are talking probably 37 years ago, something like that. I wrote a book, and I've actually written two. I've not had any published. Well, three actually. I've not had any published, but the first one I wrote longhand, and it was so long ago that there weren't computers, so I wrote it longhand. Then I got the secretary at work to type it up and print it out, and I took her flowers and chocolates whenever she completed a chapter, and it was just an adventure book, but there was some sad parts. And I remember her telling me that she actually cried a little bit when she was writing some of the parts, which kind of made me think that I was doing something along the right lines. And then several years later, I had a heart attack. As a cathartic experience, something to do after, I wrote a book, and it was basically based around somebody having a heart attack and then kind of their journey getting over it. And I wrote it, and it was just on the hard drive of a laptop I had, and that laptop is long gone now, and so is all the book I read. But it didn't matter, because I was just doing it for me, and I wrote it, and I think it was about 80,000 words, but it didn't. I just started writing and let it go where it wanted to go, and it was a great adventure. But it's ended up sad. I wanted it to end up happy, but it didn't, and there was nothing that I could do about it, because the book had taken over and the book led me where it was going to go. And then my kids came along. Well, actually before this, that was probably when I was about 52 or 53, but much earlier than this, when my kids were very, very, very young, I wrote a couple of books. And they were just typed up by the secretary again. And they're just two pieces of work to leave for my kids. And one is called Lucy and David's Christmas Adventure, where they help Santa to deliver his presents. And the other one is called If Anybody Else Mentions Christmas, which is Christmas Day from a powfagged. That's an old Lancashire word, I think. Powfagged, or worn out dad's point of view. And the Lucy and David one, I think is quite touching, because it's about this couple, Lucy and David, and I wrote it when David was about 1, and he's now in his mid to late 30s, but I kind of made him a little bit older, closer to Lucy's age. Lucy's 3 years older than he is, so that he had a bit of input into it, although he was still the baby in it. And they help Santa deliver presents, and then at the end of the story, Santa gives Lucy a present that's wrapped up in shiny silver and pink paper. And Lucy wakes up in the morning and just thinks she's had this fabulous dream. But she hasn't, because the last chapter reads, Lucy lifted herself onto one elbow and yawned. She'd had a lovely dream last night. It had been so realistic, but it had only been a dream. She turned towards the bedside table, and there, by the side of a lamp, stood a box, shiny and bright, and wrapped in beautiful paper, all silver and pink. And that's how it ends. And I've written it so that my kids will have something to remember me by. And it's just writing, and it's words. It's just putting words down on paper. That's all it is. It's easy. Anyone can do it. And I always make sure I know where those copies are in my life, in the moves I've made in my life. I always make sure I know where they are. And then I went on and I carried on writing, just writing bits of things. And then I started writing stories, some short stories, just silly little things that only took me like a couple of evenings to write. And I wrote them, and they were called Sean and Diffie, the Chronicles, and it was just about two reprobates in Lancashire and the things they got up with. And I compiled and I got all these stories together, and I self-published them in a book. Now there's a warning on the front of the book that says contains strong language, because it contains extremely strong language, really, really strong language. And it's quite funny, but I've not got a problem with strong language, because after all, most of it is just Anglo-Saxon and Norse. It's part of our history, like the longbow and Guy Fawkes. It's just part of our history, so I've not got a problem, but only if it's used funnily, humorously. As soon as you start using foul language threateningly, then as far as I'm concerned, that's assault, and that's where I draw the line. And I published that, and it's only sold a few copies. It's still in print. I wouldn't advise anyone to get it, because the language is incredibly bad. But then again, like I say, I've not got a real problem with that, and I did it for myself really, although a few of other people did it. But they're short stories, they're quite humorous. And I continue to write. So there I've self-published. I've wrote a couple of full-length novels that never came of anything, but I never wanted anything to come of them. They were just for me. And I think it's so important to write. And I got lots of comments from people saying they write. So I encourage people to write. If you read and you write and you listen, it expands your vocabulary. You become more interesting to talk to. You find it a lot easier in conversation to get your point across. I love debating, and I'm quite a good debater, even if I don't know absolutely everything about the subject I'm debating, because I'm articulate, so I can put it over quite well. And sometimes I can, and I find myself doing this, and it's not a very clever thing to do really, it's bullying. But I think if you have a really good vocabulary, a better vocabulary than the person you're debating, it's a bit threatening for them, and you can be a little bit threatening, a little bit overwhelming, a bit intimidating. So but apart from that, it's just a great language to learn. And writing isn't a skill, because if you're writing for yourself, as long as you enjoy putting it down on paper and you enjoy reading it back to yourself, it's job done. It's like a win-win situation, isn't it? So do it. Just write. I've written all my life. And like I say, I'm not academic, I'm not brilliant. And I'm happy in the knowledge that it's another string to my bow, that if I feel I need to get feelings out, I can get them out accurately, and I can put them down on paper. It must be so frustrating if you need to get something out and you haven't got the wherewithal to completely get it out on paper. That means you're holding things inside, and that's not healthy, is it? Little Molly's here in front of me. Are you coming saying hello, Molly? Yeah, little girl. So I thought we'd just come out. It's a beautiful, beautiful day. It's still, I'm sure, the 1st of May. What was it like round where you are? I think I usually wait about 5 days before I put videos out, but I might edit this and put it out straight away. I hope nobody minds that. It'll cock the YouTube algorithm up, because then it will stop promoting the last video I did. But what the hey, I'm in it for the laugh, I'm not in it to make a million. I'm surrounded by bluebells, aren't we, Molly? We're surrounded by bluebells. I thought the bluebells were going over. In my mum's garden, her bluebells are just coming out, and they've got loads and loads to come out. But they're Spanish bluebells, and Spanish bluebells are bigger and they're thicker and they're more robust and they're hardier than ours. But these round here, my word, they're absolutely stunning. Yeah. Just sitting, it's quiet. I've come away from everyone. So I'm just looking up like a slope now, and there's big boulders, because this used to be a quarry, so there were quarry buildings here. And the boulders and the blocks are covered in moss, and there's a dry stone wall right in front of me with trees growing, mature trees growing right up to it. And it's quiet, and all I can hear is the bird song. You can probably hear it over the recording. Can you? Can you hear that? Aren't we lucky? Wherever you are in the world, you live in a beautiful country. Like I always say, there's only one beautiful country in the world, and that's the country you live in. Oh, we're just going to sit here for a few minutes, listening to the birds, and the sun's warm. This is fantastic. I'm going to go and find a field to lie in. I'm going to go and find a field to lie in. I think that's good use of an afternoon. We shall see you all on the flip side. Peace and love.